It happened on a quiet Tuesday afternoon inside one of the most exclusive, fiercely guarded luxury boutiques in Mayfair. Queen Camilla, accustomed to the breathless deference that accompanies the absolute pinnacle of British royalty, signaled to her private secretary to finalize a staggering discretionary acquisition using her designated royal household account. But instead of a polite bow and a swift authorization, the boutique's senior director approached with a pale face and a meticulously worded apology. He informed her that her royal procurement account had been administratively suspended and outside unnoticed by the Queen upon her arrival. Maintenance workers were already quietly unscrewing the prestigious Royal Warrant coat of arms from the shop's pristine facade. In a matter of seconds, the woman who had spent 30 years ruthlessly engineering her ascent to the throne realized she had been socially and commercially exiled. This is the story of a staggering exploitation of the Crown's historical prestige, a secret plot to mint a shadow currency of social power, and the silent, devastating retaliation executed by Prince William and Princess Anne. In the following moments, we are going to unpack exactly how Camilla attempted to build an untouchable financial network for her non-royal lineage, how the future king uncovered the paper trail, and the crushing realization that the woman wearing the crown actually possesses absolutely zero institutional equity. To understand the sheer gravity of this sudden humiliation, one must first recognize the magnificent illusion of absolute power she had constructed around herself. For nearly 3 decades, Camilla operated with the confidence of an untouchable strategist. She survived the intense global backlash of the 1990s, navigating the treacherous waters of public opinion to emerge as the ultimate victor. She was the controversial figure who forced the most rigid institution on earth to bend entirely to her will, methodically overseeing the institutional erasure of Princess Diana's legacy while replacing those memories with her own carefully curated aesthetic. By the time the heavy crown was placed on her head, she operated under the profound belief that she had King Charles completely controlled. She felt utterly invincible, carrying herself not merely as a supportive spouse, but as an independent sovereign. Viewers noticed subtle but aggressive pushes to elevate her non-royal children into the institutional fold, assuming that a new title would rewrite history and grant her absolute immunity from the ancient rules of the palace. She believed that her proximity to the monarch granted her the ultimate authority to dictate the future of the royal family. But absolute power requires absolute financial leverage, and as the reality of the king's declining health became an undeniable factor behind the palace gates, Camilla's commercial desperation began to seep through the cracks of her manufactured invincibility. She was terrifyingly aware of the forensic reality of her situation. She knows that she does not own the sprawling royal estates, the billion-dollar Duchy of Cornwall, or the endless stream of capital that funds her extravagant lifestyle. When Charles is gone, every tangible asset of the monarchy instantly transfers to Prince William. Realizing that she could not legally secure the land or the sovereign wealth, she attempted a quiet but massive transfer of a different kind of wealth. She attempted to mint her own social power currency. What appears to be true, based on the sudden restructuring of palace administration, is that Camilla initiated aggressive moves to hijack the royal warrants of appointment. The royal warrant is the ultimate mark of prestige, a highly restricted commercial endorsement granted only to those who supply goods or services to the highest levels of the royal household. It is a symbol that can transform a business overnight, guaranteeing global elite status and astronomical financial returns. Camilla recognized that while she could not give her family royal land, she could give their business associates royal endorsements. She sought to quietly funnel these priceless institutional endorsements toward a vast network of billionaire friends, luxury lifestyle brands, and the culinary and literary connections of her own son, Tom Parker Bowles. By granting royal warrants to her inner circle, she was building a shadow economy of royal favor. She was creating a powerful syndicate of elite loyalists who would owe their commercial success entirely to her, ensuring that she and her children would remain heavily backed by billionaire private interests long after her royal funding dried up. It was an audacious play to turn a temporary royal privilege into permanent dynastic wealth, banking on the assumption that the palace bureaucracy would blindly process her authorizations out of fear of upsetting the king. The fatal flaw in her strategy was forgetting who was actually auditing the ledger. When William ascended to the role of Prince of Wales, he did not just inherit a title. He inherited the administrative architecture of the monarchy's future. William does not manage the royal apparatus through emotional outbursts or tabloid leaks. He manages it like a ruthless chief executive who has just taken over a deeply compromised corporation. During a comprehensive protocol-driven review of the Royal Warrant Holders Association, William's financial and legal teams flagged a highly irregular surge in fast-tracked applications that bore the Queen Consort's authorization. William did not confront her. He systematically traced every single administrative request she had made over the past year. He uncovered a sprawling web of commercial favoritism designed to bleed the historical prestige of the crown, to elevate her personal profile and enrich her non-royal bloodline. What he found was not just standard aristocratic networking, it was a calculated, devastating threat to the integrity of the monarchy itself. William brought this undeniable paper trail directly to Princess Anne. If William is the executor of the monarchy's future, Anne is the unyielding guardian of its history. Princess Anne has always operated with a fierce, uncompromising protection of the crown, viewing any attempt to exploit the institution for commercial branding with cold disgust. When she reviewed the documents detailing Camilla's attempted manipulation of the royal warrants, the moral outrage was absolute. They recognized that Camilla was trying to cheapen the very symbol of the British monarchy, treating the crown's seal of approval like a transactional favor to be traded among London's high society. The retaliation was immediately set into motion. It is vital to understand that they did not retaliate with screaming matches in the private quarters. They retaliated with the devastating weaponization of administrative protocol. They used the very bureaucratic system Camilla thought she had conquered to completely dismantle her shadow empire. William's execution of this purge was a masterclass in weaponized restraint. Using his increasing executive authority over the Lord Chamberlain's office, which oversees the granting of warrants, William initiated a sudden comprehensive overhaul of the authorization guidelines. He quietly and legally centralized the power, mandating that all new and renewing royal warrants required the explicit countersignature of the Prince of Wales, effectively freezing Camilla out of the process. The humiliation was executed flawlessly through standard protocol. When Camilla's office attempted to push through a new batch of endorsements for her son's elite business associates, the requests were simply denied due to a failure to meet the newly revised ultra-strict institutional criteria. That detail matters immensely. By legally restructuring the granting authority, William did not just block a few applications. He stripped Camilla of her ability to manufacture power. He placed her under an administrative siege. The luxury brands and billionaire friends who had eagerly aligned themselves with Camilla suddenly found their prestigious royal status under review and, in many cases, quietly revoked. The visual humiliation of the purge was staggering. Overnight, highly publicized brands associated with Camilla's inner circle were politely ordered to remove the royal arms from their packaging, their storefronts, and their marketing materials. Camilla was slowly being suffocated by red tape, completely unable to fight back without exposing her own commercial desperation to the public. She could not complain to the press without revealing that she was trying to exploit the crown for personal gain. Every move she made was blocked by a polite protocol-driven email from William's office. The moment the trap snapped shut was the moment in the Mayfair boutique. Standing in the center of the luxurious room, holding a denied authorization while watching the symbol of the monarchy being physically unscrewed from the wall, Camilla realized the absolute finality of her situation. These were not administrative accidents. These were symbolic psychological clues and forensic proof of shifting power. They were messages written in the cold language of the institution, telling her that her era of manipulation was permanently over. She had spent decades behaving like the absolute owner of the crown's prestige, only to be brutally reminded that she was merely a temporary employee whose privileges could be revoked at a moment's notice. The illusion of her social supremacy evaporated in an instant, leaving her entirely isolated. Realizing she had absolutely no leverage left, she did the only thing she had done for 30 years whenever the institution pushed back. She abandoned her shopping trip, returned immediately to the palace, and walked directly into King Charles's private sitting room, demanding a royal command to reverse the humiliation. When Queen Camilla entered the king's private sitting room, she was not looking for a compromise or a comforting embrace. She was looking for a royal command. She carried with her the suspended account notifications, the rejected royal warrant applications, and the undeniable proof of Prince William's administrative insubordination. For 30 years, this was the exact dynamic that had guaranteed her survival. Whenever the palace machinery attempted to marginalize her, whenever the public demanded her removal, she would turn to Charles. And Charles, blinded by a lifelong, uncompromising devotion, would always step in to shield her, overriding his advisors, his mother, and his own sons. She laid the administrative paperwork in front of the king, expecting him to pick up the phone, summon the Lord Chamberlain, and demand the immediate reinstatement of her financial autonomy and her absolute authority over the crown's commercial endorsements. Instead, Charles looked down at the newly revised authorization protocols, and then he looked at her. And he did absolutely nothing. The silence that filled that room was the most devastating psychological climax of Camilla's entire royal existence. Charles did not rage against his son. He did not offer words of righteous anger to his wife. Accounts of the shifting power dynamics within the palace suggest that Charles, physically exhausted and deeply aware of his own fragile mortality, simply accepted the paperwork. He recognized the flawless bureaucratic perfection of his son's trap. William had not explicitly banned Camilla from the process. He had simply raised the ethical and commercial standards for the crown's endorsements, requiring a level of strict financial vetting that her billionaire friends and her son's associates could never pass. Charles knew that if he attempted to override these new integrity protocols, he would be effectively confirming to the state that the monarchy was running a corrupt, pay-to-play scheme to benefit the Queen Consort's private network. The king was forced to choose between protecting the historical integrity of the crown and protecting his wife's secret social currency. In that quiet, unremarkable moment of surrender, Charles chose the institution. For Camilla, this was a terminal diagnosis for her influence. The devastating realization that Charles would no longer save her triggered a profound commercial desperation. To the outside world, she was still the Queen Consort waving from the balcony of Buckingham Palace. But behind closed doors, the forensic reality of her situation was terrifyingly clear. She owns virtually nothing of consequence, and now she could not even manufacture the illusion of ownership. The billionaire tycoons, the luxury fashion houses, and the elite culinary empires who had enthusiastically courted her over the last decade were not her genuine friends. They were investors. They were investing in her proximity to the throne, banking on the promise of a royal warrant to elevate their global branding. The moment William revoked her ability to grant those warrants, her social currency crashed to absolute zero. She was essentially bankrupt in the only economy that mattered to her. The social exile that followed was swift and brutally polite. Without the leverage of royal endorsements, Camilla's inner circle began to quietly distance themselves. The high society associates of her son, Tom Parker Bowles, who had previously enjoyed unparalleled access to royal events and fast-tracked commercial favors, suddenly found their emails to the palace unanswered. Brands that had aggressively heavily positioned themselves around the Queen Consort began to pivot, quietly removing her imagery from their public relations campaigns. Camilla realized that without the king's active protection and without the ability to hand out the crown's prestige, she had no organic leverage. She had spent decades behaving like the absolute owner of a corporation, only to be brutally reminded that she was merely a temporary tenant, relying entirely on the grace of the landlord. And the new landlord was a man who had spent his entire life waiting to evict her influence. While Camilla was suffocating under this administrative siege, a new order was quietly cementing itself within the palace walls. As Camilla shrank into commercial irrelevance, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, expanded to fill the void with an unbothered, effortless grace. Catherine did not need to scheme for brand deals or manipulate the Lord Chamberlain's office to secure her social standing. Her power is not transactional. It is an undeniable reality forged through years of uncomplaining sacrifice, flawless duty, and the production of the direct royal heirs. The contrast between the two women became a masterclass in the weaponization of restraint. While Camilla frantically tried to secure commercial lifelines in the shadows, Catherine simply occupied the space she had rightfully earned. The shifting power dynamic was not broadcast in press releases, but in devastating visual cues that the luxury and commercial sectors immediately understood. Brands realized that a single unprompted photograph of Catherine wearing one of their garments or patronizing their business carried more global economic weight than 100 royal warrants signed by Camilla. The Princess of Wales possesses the organic, untouchable Kate effect, a multi-billion-dollar economic force that operates entirely independently of palace bureaucracy. Catherine was taking her rightful place at the absolute center of the royal framework, dictating global trends and commanding absolute respect without ever having to raise her voice or engage in petty palace warfare. She let the undeniable weight of her global influence do the talking, effortlessly eclipsing the artificial syndicate Camilla had tried to build. This silent execution carries a devastating, deeper meaning that resonates far beyond a simple dispute over luxury boutiques and branded packaging. What the world is witnessing is William executing the justice his mother never received. For decades, William endured the presence of the woman who tormented Diana, maintaining a mask of polite acceptance for the sake of the crown and his father's fragile happiness. He watched Camilla systematically attempt to exploit the royal brand to rewrite history and secure a dynasty for her non-royal children. But William never forgot, and he never forgave. Now holding the absolute financial and administrative power of the monarchy in his hands, he is dismantling Camilla's legacy brick by brick. He is cleaning house before he even takes the keys. He is protecting the historical prestige of the crown from being hawked to the highest bidder. And he is protecting his wife from the exact same institutional sabotage that destroyed his mother. As the king's reign inevitably moves toward its twilight, whether through a formalized abdication or the natural progression of time, Camilla's future has already been written. When William officially ascends the throne, she will face the ultimate downgrade. As a dowager queen without the protection of her husband, her relevance, her funding, and her access to high society will exist entirely at the mercy of King William and Queen Catherine. The woman who clawed her way to the crown will find herself quietly managed out of the institution, banished to the margins of royal history. She will be remembered not as the triumphant victor she believed herself to be, but as a temporary liability that the monarchy eventually corrected. The illusion of her absolute power has been permanently shattered, replaced by the cold reality of an empty ledger. Thank you for watching. If you found this breakdown of the hidden commercial power dynamics inside the palace insightful, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an analysis. Leave your thoughts on William's silent strategy in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.